with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, August 1st, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, 15 months out from the 2024 election, Biden's poll numbers slightly tick up despite poor favorability. Meanwhile, new testimony shows Hunter Biden was selling the illusion that he could influence his dad in Comer's latest flop. Trump Super PAC, Save America, has spent almost all of its money on lawyers. And the way that they spent that money, they're going to need more. Fulton County judge rejects Trump's attempt to quash the Georgia grand jury. Teamsters locals vote 161-1 to endorse the UPS agreement. Rank and file voting starts on Thursday. Meanwhile, rolling strikes against LA hotels continue. Oklahoma is sued to stop its plans for the first state-funded religious school in the country. Phoenix, meanwhile, recovering from its record-breaking extreme heat streak. And if you're holding student debt, enrollment now open for income-driven relief. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Hospitalizations still at an all-time low, but are beginning to tick up. Recently, a reminder: COVID not dead yet. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. It is
Newsday Tuesday.
There you go. That was well timed. The way that Emma came right in there.
Just fading right in. Telling you what day it is.
Non-birthing person on the IM says there's 1,200 live viewers on YouTube, but only 200 likes. I know libertarians like MR, but didn't know they are the majority. I don't know what that means.
Well, like the stream.
Oh, God. All right. So, hit the like, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Hit the like. Why am I?
Engagement.
What's going on with where am I sitting? What is? No, I got this. You stay there. I'm gonna do this a little bit. There we go.
All right.
I know people are writing in. My name is Vivek. I'm here to say I'm rapping in the libertarian way. 1, 2, buckle my shoe. 3, 4, I hate the poor. So honestly, like literally just before the show started, I was like, I really hope Vivek wins the nomination. That would be.
So Fox and friends, join us on the trail. We'll have some fun. I'll see you out the trail.
I could listen to that for like a half hour.
I know.
You're saying that you haven't, right? I mean, that's
how I warm up.
Yeah.
I like that. I like actually his voice is actually. I like his voice too.
Good delivery.
It's not. I mean, it's so. Let's get. We'll get into some news, but I just want to give you, the SAG-AFTRA strike, the writer's strike continues. We are now in week 4. Mm-hmm. I think it's just starting, right? Of the SAG-AFTRA strike, yes. And here is a couple of clips from last week. I'm going to be down there Thursday. They only do it in the mornings.
Oh,
so
right.
I'm not exactly sure why that is.
Giving out your assassination coordinates?
Well, there's multiple locations, so nobody knows where I'll be.
Good point.
Here is let's do Bryan Cranston first. This is Bryan Cranston from last week. He really laid into Bob Iger, and well, I want to just like note one interesting dynamic in this strike that we haven't seen in the past because of the change in the nature of the industry. But here's Cranston, and this is out in L.A., right? Yeah. Oh, this is in New York? Oh, this is Times Square one. Okay.
I find it very, very ironic that we are all gathered here today in unity in front of an entity that is run by Disney. And now we've got a message for Mr. Iger. I know, sir, that you look through things through a different lens. We don't expect you to understand who we are, but we ask you to hear us, and beyond that, to listen to us when we tell you we will not be having our jobs taken away and giving to robots. We will not have you take away our right to work and earn a decent living. And lastly, and most importantly, we will not allow you to take away our dignity. We are union through and through, all the way to the end. Thank you. God bless you. Stay together. We will win this fight. God bless you.
Yeah, he's got a lot of gravitas. He should look into acting.
And well, but here's the thing. Again, this is a guy who is not impacted by any of this at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he doesn't. When you see the stars and the actors who have had this type of success, you're seeing people who their pay supersedes what the SAG-AFTRA minimums required are. Their deals basically ride on top of what SAG, the union, requires. And so they're out there fighting for the literally tens, 30, 40, 50, 60, I mean, really 30,000 other, there's 160,000 SAG-AFTRA. They're out there fighting really for the other 155,000 members of the, I'm just picking a number, but
87% earn less than 26,000 a year.
And 26,000 is the cutoff for health insurance there. And so this is a big fight for a lot of working class folks who are working other jobs as well while they're trying to make it into acting. And the fact is that when you see the end product of any given show, for every person you see on that screen, there was 100, maybe 200 who came in for an audition and didn't get paid for that audition. Maybe they came in for multiple auditions. For every single, guest star, lead, there are hundreds of others putting in their labor that end up that provide sort of like the opportunity for casting directors and for producers to choose one who works best in that role. That's the way the industry works. I don't know if there's any other way to work it, but you need to be able to pay off for all that unpaid work that goes into it that ultimately makes the shows that you like. And it's the same thing with the writers. For every script, show that you see, there's been, 10x scripts written that never get picked up. Here is Ilana Glazer from the Broad City.
Yeah.
And here she's, I guess, is on the Betches News podcast.
Going off on billionaires, they dehumanize us. They dehumanize their workers. They even dehumanize the handsome, white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy that they want to be, who's their avatar. In their minds, they're fucking Matt Damon. They even dehumanize him. They are so far off from what humanity is. These billionaires do not move their bodies among people. They do not travel next to people. They do not sweat near other people. They literally don't understand what's happening. And I'm pissed, I'm angry, but I'm like, actually they're weak-minded. They truly thought that they could write off actors. You thought you could write off Meryl Streep, bitch? You thought you could write off Jason Bourne? He left his press, dog. And these billionaires want to go to space. Go! Why do you even want TV and film? And we don't need them to spiritually or intellectually get there. We just need them to agree to the negotiations. It is disturbing that they thought that they could overlook it.
The interesting dynamic here that is different from, let's say, the writer's strike that took place in 2008 or
7?
No, it was 2008 or 9. I can't remember exactly when it was. It was
Writer's strike?
Maybe it was 2007. Yeah, it was maybe 2007 actually. Now, the big difference between then and we haven't had a substantial actors strike that has gone on this far since I think 1960 or 62. The big difference between the writer's strike from 15 years ago and today is that you have this the AMTP. I can't even remember. The Producers Association, and at that time, it was made up of studios and producers and networks who were all basically on the same business model. You have different players in there that may have slightly different dynamics as to what they've invested in or what they anticipate their future in. Some, networks may be more interested in, reality shows, others less so. But now with streamers and the tech sort of industry in it, right? Amazon and Apple, and even Netflix. With streamers, you have really different models of how they're going to make their money and where they see their future revenues lying. And then the disparity between an Amazon and a Netflix and an Apple in terms of where they see their revenues coming is also more less homogenous, I guess, than amongst the sort of old Hollywood type of players. And the reason why I think there's more power, in addition to the fact that there's definitely more unity amongst the unions, amongst within the writers union, within the SAG-AFTRA, the producers, their interests are not as aligned as they have been in the past. And that's going to provide an opportunity for some of them to go we need to peel off now. And that's going to be interesting to see as we go on. But it's going to start getting really hard for actors and writers in particular. I mean, it's going to start getting hard.
Well, so you should donate if you have the ability to the strike fund, right? I mean, I saw that The Rock, we mentioned this before, made a 7-figure donation, which is amazing. But reality TV, it's not a coincidence that its golden era and when it really took off was 2007, 2008.
Oh, without a doubt.
I mean, they did that to circumvent the writers. And the irony is that the reality stars facing the same issue right now that a lot of the actors are, in that the shows that are on streaming, they're not getting residuals either.
Right.
And so...
And we should also say, I got some bad news for you about the reality shows.
Yeah,
they're scripted.
They're
not word for word, not scripted, but the scenarios. I mean,
but the early stuff that really got it kicked off, like those Jersey Shore kids, were treated like garbage, and they don't see any of the residuals that they get from that being one of the most popular shows of all time. So they should unionize too.
Got more news to cover, but first, a word from one of our sponsors today, Henson Shaving. Henson Shaving is a family-owned Canadian aerospace parts manufacturer that has made parts for the International Space Station, the Mars rover, and now they are bringing their precision engineering to your shaving experience. I have here in my hand a Henson shaver. You've used disposable shavers. You've used the ones with the handles where you got to keep getting the blades sent to you by mail and whatnot. The reason why your disposable shavers are uncomfortable, the reason why you get nicks, the reason why you get scrapes, turns out it is not because the blade is not sharp enough or whatnot. You can make the blade sharp. The issue turns out to be the length from which the blade is distance between that and the razor, the stability of the blade. And these guys use numeric
control
machines. I can't ever remember that. Their razors extend just 0.0013 inches, less than the thickness of a human hair, and that means a secure blade and a stable blade with a great shave. Plus, I don't know if you can see that here, they got these built-in channels to evacuate the hair, so you don't have to bang it on your sink, or you use your thumb. Don't do that. That scares the hell out of me. I can't even talk about that.
Scary.
I got caught on a deli slicer when I back
Sam.
in the kid. Yeah, sorry. Anyways, I shouldn't have brought that up, but it was horrible. So now I think about that. But here's the thing about this, and my only explanation is that these guys are Canadian, because they entered into the razor business. They didn't want to be necessarily the best razor business in terms of like model, where they hook you in on subscriptions and you got it, or their blades are proprietary or whatnot. They want it to be the best razor. So here's the deal. You buy this razor, and they actually have a couple of different models on their site. And it's really, I mean, it feels good. It's,
I said that to you. Good. I was like, this is like too good of a deal. They send you all those blades and you just don't have to worry about it.
Well, here's the thing. You buy this, and then the blades are the non-proprietary, sort of like classic, old school dual edge blades. They cost you, I don't know, anywhere from like $3 to $5 a year. And if you buy a Henson shaver right now, they're giving the Majority Report listeners a 2-year supply of blades for free. You just go to hensonshaving.com/majority. That's Henson, HENSON, shaving.com/majority. You got to make sure you add the razor pack. You add a razor, and then you take the 100 pack of blades. Make sure you put that in your cart. Enter the code majority. You will get the blades for free. The link is in the description. It is a great shaver. I don't know what to tell you. I've got the black model at home.
Ooh.
Yeah, I like the look of it. So check it out. We'll put a link in the podcast and YouTube description. All right, let's just look briefly at these new polling. We talked about the polling yesterday. Donald Trump is dusting Ron DeSantis. Still fun to see. Now, here's the other thing. Donald Trump, or Joe Biden for that matter, could have a heart attack in the next year.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know. But
and if he's the nominee, I think it's a better chance that Biden wins, but he's still the nominee. And that's a scary proposition in and of itself. Trump could be the president once again.
Oh, yeah.
Like, not to just discount that.
I just got 2 IMs here. How do you know how good that blade feels with that luscious beard, Sam? Just asking questions. To be honest with you, like, this is it. Right here, right here, right here, and right here.
Yeah. But I now have 2 people in my life using that, and they're full shavers, and they're loving it.
I'm woking from home says, honestly, shout out to Henson. Glad they sponsored the show. I've suffered from awful razor burn my whole adult life, but it has dramatically improved since trying the Henson shaver.
There you go.
Anyways, okay, so Biden polling numbers out. The thing that I find interesting about this is just a reminder as to like sort of what people base their votes on. Joe Biden would not have been my choice in 2020. Well, he wasn't in the primary, but I don't know who I would prefer as a nominee in 2024.
Not exactly spoiled for choice.
No, but I mean the bottom line is it is very difficult to unseat an incumbent. The entire party apparatus obviously is in favor of it. And the biggest complaint about Biden, it seems, at least from the core Democratic voters, is that he's old, and he is.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. The Biden is in a neck and neck race with Donald Trump. They are tied at 43% at a hypothetical rematch in 2024. This is according to a Times Siena poll. But if you can believe it, that's actually, there are numbers. There's an improvement here for Biden. 30% of the voters who said they plan to vote for Biden in November 2024 said they hoped the Democrats would nominate someone else. Just 20% of Democrats said they would be enthusiastic. Another 51% say they would be satisfied, but not enthusiastic. But this is up because at one point, like several months ago, 65% of Democrats did not want him to be the nominee. Biden had the backing of 64% of Democrats who plan to participate in their party's primary, an indicator of soft support for an incumbent president. 13% preferred Robert Kennedy Jr., which is frankly, I mean, shocking to me. And I think that I would like to see what his support would be in a Republican primary, because most of his campaigning, it seems to me, to be geared towards that. 10% chose Marianne Williamson, which I think is a pretty good showing. Among Democratic poll respondents who have a record in voting in a primary before, Biden enjoyed a far wider lead, 74 to 8%. He had 92% to 4% among those who voted in a Democratic primary in 2022. So in other words, the most enthusiastic Democratic, conscientious Democratic voters support Biden overwhelmingly.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just sort of weird, though, when they start to like interview different individuals. A common view toward Mr. Biden is illustrated in voters like Melody Marquez, 54, a retiree and a left-leaning independent from Tyler, Texas. Ms. Marquez, who voted for Biden in 2020 as the lesser of two evils, can understand that, was not happy about his handling of the pandemic. It's unclear what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could go both ways.
Blaming him for inflation and a tight labor market. Yeah, now Matt just went like, what? Still, she would vote again for Mr. Biden, who is 80 years old. This is what gets, she's a left-leaning independent. So it suggests to me that she's actually probably voted for Republicans more, because if she's 54 and a retiree, she obviously is, her work situation, her financial situation, probably not too bad. I mean, it's 2 years younger than me.
Yeah.
I can't retire right now. She was unhappy about a tight labor market. Why would you be unhappy about a tight labor market if you
are? She's probably a small business owner.
There's
right?
something like that.
Yeah.
You know, like this
collecting
is the thing.
passive income. Maybe she's a landlord.
People don't want to work anymore.
It is a weird thing. I mean, it's a weird thing that the Times include this type of like sort of like, this is a common view. It seems like a very odd view.
Though they love that. They love finding, a voter that's going to be a little bit unique and make their story easier.
And also be a small business.
And but she goes on to say, I'm sorry, but both of them to me are too old. She's right. Joe Biden to me seems less mentally capable age-wise, but Trump is just evil. He's done horrible things. I mean,
that's true.
Yeah. Mr. Biden has recovered significantly from last summer. Again, last summer, Times Siena poll, same poll, found 64% of Democrats said they did not want the party to renominate him, including 94% of Democrats under the age of 30. Now, only half of all Democrats said they did not want Biden to be the nominee in 2024. Mayama Langam, 38, a government analyst from Atlanta who described herself as a political progressive not aligned with the party. Again, like they're looking for people who describe themselves as sort of like your center, left of center voter, said Mr. Biden's tax policy had been skewed to favor the wealthy while the middle class paid more than its fair share. We're kind of smushed in the middle. We're taking the brunt of taxes for everybody. Now, this is just like, this is why I'm reading this is to let you know just sort of like how these bizarre narratives get fixed in people's heads. There have been, well, first of all, what she's saying is completely not the case. There is no Joe Biden tax policy for the middle class that has changed whatsoever. The only changes that ever existed to the tax policy would have been in they didn't pass anything. It would have been in the Inflation Reduction Act, the CARES Act, the American Rescue Act, or the Secure 2.0 Act. In the first one, the American Rescue Act, the only changes in tax policy were child tax credits that literally paid people who had kids $300 a month per each kid.
Yeah, but that's been sunsetted or it expired for over a year at this point.
Yes.
So what could she possibly be complaining about?
Well, it's possible that she perceived that as a
hike.
I'm not sure. I doubt it, because it doesn't code as a tax, right? Like it's just you're not getting a payment. The Inflation Reduction Act had a 30% tax credit for solar or like geothermal or wind power or whatever it was. There were also tax credits for EVs. Like this is all like tax breaks. There were subsidies for insurance under the Affordable Care Act that were extended. There was a 1% tax on the value of stock buybacks by corporations.
Who can object to that?
There was a 15% corporate minimum tax. There was never a tax hike on anywhere near the middle class. There was changes in required minimum distributions from your pension fund, but that was all to the benefit of people who wanted more money. There are adjustments to the 2023 tax brackets, but that has to do with like the top bracket. And that is a 2.6%. Oh, no, that doesn't happen until 2025. I mean, so it's just bizarre because there has been no change to this woman's taxes, personal taxes under Biden, yet she's convinced that there is. And it just gives you a sense of like, this is what.
Like what motivates people is inherently bizarre, often contradictory, nonsensical. But for the most part, I don't really hear much about the use of inclusive language for trans people. Is that really affecting people?
It doesn't seem to be into the polls. Ashlyn Cowan, 27, a research scientist from Nashville, said she wished Biden had been more aggressive about canceling student loan debt. This at least is like, she's an informed voter. Even before, and then it goes on to say, nevertheless, Cowan said she would back Biden in a race against Trump. You have Trump that has shown characteristics I'm staunchly against, and Biden just not being the greatest person to do the job. Ultimately, Biden's is not going to harm the country as much as I believe Trump would, which I think is a pretty straightforward take on this. With that said, and I think it is, I think there's an argument to be had about Biden not being aggressive enough, without a doubt. And, you know, there are people I think have legitimate arguments as to maybe Biden could have used a different tact in terms of dealing with the Supreme Court. I think there's also an argument that it was going to fail at the Supreme Court regardless. And but I think there's still some arrows in that quiver.
There's messaging arrows in the quiver.
Without
I mean,
doubt.
the problem is like that, you know, Biden has done some good things.
Well,
but
yes,
it's not been communicated in any meaningful way.
Also, I mean, with student loan debt, I mean, what like Dayan and the prospect got is like they should have done the method they're doing now immediately in the first like week. Because
Without
then we
a
would have
doubt.
got to this point.
Exactly. And so getting to that, it is now the SAVE option, I guess it is. The SAVE student loan repayment plan is now live. The website, it's in beta, but it is worth going there now. studentaid.gov/LDR, or excuse me, IDR for income-driven repayment. It's on the studentaid.gov site. Here it is. This is, and supposedly the Biden plan, the original plan, which frankly should have been $50,000, but if the Supreme Court had okayed Biden's plan, it was projected to provide $400 billion worth of relief. If everybody eligible for this plan, the income-driven repayment plan, signs up, it's projected to provide $360 billion worth of relief. But it is, those dollar figures may be somewhat equivalent, but you got to keep in mind, getting a $10,000 or $20,000 debt relief today is worth more money to the individual than it might be 10 years out. Does that follow? Obviously,
Yes.
You want to defer, you want any money you can put in your pocket today, essentially, or get lopped off. But nevertheless, instead of paying 10% of discretionary income a month toward undergraduate student debt under the previous pay-as-you-earn retirement plan or repay plan, borrowers will eventually be required to pay just 5% of their discretionary income under the SAVE plan. Those who make less than $15 an hour won't need to make any payments under the new option. And here's how it works. Also, they are changing the definition. So reduces what undergraduate loan borrowers pay monthly from 10% to 5% of discretionary income. Increase what is considered non-discretionary income protected from repayment. So, in other words, not only do you pay only 5% of discretionary income, what constitutes discretionary income will be decreased. So you'll be paying half the percentage on a lesser amount. And there will be no monthly payment required of borrowers making below 225% of the federal poverty level, which is for a family of two. That means if your family of two makes less than $44,000, you are required to make no payments. If you're a family of three, $54,000. Family of four, $67,000. You will be required to make no payments whatsoever. After 10 years of payments, instead of 20 years, if your original loan balance was $12,000 or less, you have no more balances. You have no more payments to make. That's going to help like a lot of community college students and a lot of people who went to a college, probably a for-profit college, and dropped out relatively quickly. The new application supposedly takes 10 minutes or less. and you can sign up now. It is a beta system, so still in the beta phase. So they're still sort of like testing the thing, but you can sign up for it and it will count. It's just that there may be a bug or two.
It's something in the interim while they try to hopefully do what they initially should have done that Matt referenced earlier, which was using the Higher Education Act.
Yes. Again, unclear whether, but I think they probably want to work this through the system, get this done, try and get it unchallenged, and then launch that. But who knows? But that's just a reality. But at the very least, what's encouraging is that at least that 27-year-old knew what she was talking about.
Yeah.
The others were secretly business owners that they called Democrats. Like that's why it's not helpful. Like we need more information than I think of myself this way on election day. That's less relevant. Do you own a business? Like do you have student loan debt? Like that's actual relevant information.
Right. And we should say let's see. The income caps on the IDR plan are abysmal. $67K for a family of 4 is poverty. This is worse than the income cap from the initial plan. No. It's not an income cap. That is, if you make less than that, you owe no payments. It's not a cap as to whether you get relief. The relief happens for everybody. But if you make less than $67,000 for a family of 4, you have no payments. So it is not an income cap. So I want to make that clear. It is not an income cap. It applies to everyone. Also, payments not made in the first 12 months will not be considered delinquent because they're ramping up this thing. Is this only apply for undergraduate loans? I'm not sure about that, but I think so. But here's the point about the polling. It is national polling, and largely that is largely irrelevant. Joe Biden is going to get more votes than Donald Trump. The Democrat is almost more than likely going to get more votes than the Republican nationally. I don't think that's going to change.
I mean, when's the last time that it didn't? 2004?
2004.
Yeah. And the one before that was
not the case.
Not the case.
Al Gore had more votes. This election is going to come down to about like a half a dozen states. It's going to be Arizona. It's going to be Michigan and Pennsylvania and Georgia and Wisconsin, Nevada, maybe North Carolina. That's basically where it's going to play out. And in Georgia, remember, Biden won by what? Like 1,000 votes? And there's a story today, in the Times. And again, hard to know.
But it does match with what Democrats have been saying they're concerned about, which is black turnout. It was down 10% in 2020.
Biden won by 11,000 votes in Georgia last time in 2020. But there is I think there's probably a lack of enthusiasm across the board for Democratic voters, but black people make up the core of the Democratic base, frankly, and particularly in Georgia, they're 32%, almost 33% of the electorate. If in 2020, according to the Times, if less than 1% of black voters had voted for Trump or stayed home, Biden loses. And the real issue is staying home. Like, how do you get people to come out when it is hard for them to see any demonstrable change? Now, you can argue Biden tried. Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema. I think there was I'm not going to relitigate the fact that I think that they should have come in after March, after passing the American Rescue Act, and they should have done it quick, and they definitely should have. And Biden's sort of playing footsie and with the Republicans to make it look like he was being bipartisan, and then allowing Sinema to push a plan and then splitting that up. et cetera, I think was at best incompetence. At worst, just a way of like sort of, pulling back on their ambitions.
Well, he wanted to bring Republicans in.
I mean,
and that's so when we read those quotes from all those voters, that's what they were thinking about, right? Were the Republicans pulled into the negotiations on Biden's domestic?
You'll read a bunch of general election stuff. Like, I just want them to get along and do stuff.
Right, but the nature of the nature of them getting along, like the daily minutia of the drama on Capitol Hill, is not changing that persuasion, right? I mean, they generally want you to get along, but no one remembers when or why people didn't get along.
Right. No, it's just not the way that government generally works.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the situation there. It's early. It's super early, and we'll see. Again, in a month, into the fall, we'll invite some candidates on. Right now, it looks like Marianne Williamson is out there, and I wouldn't mind talking to Cornel West as well to just get an idea of like what policies it would be nice if we're more centered in our political discussion, but that is not the era that we're in at the moment. In many respects, the failure of getting a Bernie Sanders elected in the primary, still sort of resonates. And, from an electoral standpoint, the left part of the Democratic Party is still sort of regrouping, I think. I mean, I don't even know who, it feels like we're still a decade off from having, any type of like real actors there. But with that said, there's just simply no doubt that the Democratic Party hasn't moved in that direction over the past 10 years. I did not anticipate Joe Biden proposing the Build Back Better bill. And there is no reason for a sitting president to propose something that was going to fail so spectacularly as his proposal did. There's no political value in that. I think he's still recovering, frankly, from the failure of getting that on board. And the further we get out from it, the less there's this perspective of his incompetence. But meanwhile, the Republicans continue to try and generate the Biden crime family narrative, and they're not doing a very good job. They had closed door
interview, basically.
Yes, testimony from a former Hunter Biden associate, a guy named Devin Archer, who apparently was investigated and convicted under the Trump administration of I'm not sure what he was. He's about to get sentenced.
Fraud charges.
Fraud charges.
He defrauded a number of like indigenous tribes out of thousands, and he had to pay back pay of like $15 million.
Classy guy. Classy guy.
Nice guy.
Yeah.
And they brought him in. Now, you're probably wondering why would the Republicans not want this guy to testify in public?
Yeah. I mean, don't they want the public to hear about this associate of the Biden crime family? By the way, that the indigenous fraud scheme was unrelated to Hunter Biden.
Right. This was just another business proposition of this guy. In the nearly 5 hours of closed-door testimony in the House Oversight Committee, Devin Archer, former partner, asserted that the elder Mr. Biden was not party to any of his son's business deals and that Hunter Biden had tried to sell the illusion that he was providing access to his powerful father when he was not. This is classic sort of like fail son nepotism that we see in the context of politics all the time. I don't know whether it's like Billy Carter. I don't know if anybody remembers him. Billy Boy would he got caught peeing outside, and that was a big, but all of them. Hillary Clinton's brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Like all of them.
It's called job hunting for rich kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, and the Trump kids would never trade on their name.
And the Republicans are trying to argue that Biden lied when he claimed that he had no involvement in his son's business dealings, because apparently what Hunter Biden would do is he would be with business associates. He would call his dad on speakerphone, and they would just like, hey, Dad, what's up? And it was not clear that Joe Biden was aware that there was anybody else in the room. And it was just a way of Hunter proving that I'm not alienated from my father. Now, we should be clear. Some of this happened while Joe Biden was vice president, which also in 2015 is the time where Hunter Biden's brother and Joe Biden's son, Beau, was dying of brain cancer. And Biden, probably knowing that his son was an F-up, is going to answer the phone calls. And, you know, the trauma associated with having been in a car accident with your mom and your sister and your brothers, and ending up in the hospital with your mom and your sister killed in the car accident. I mean, I can understand how that may very well screw you up for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And, but here is James Comer on Sean Hannity's show. Again, like, hope springs eternal. They're coming on to deliver the goods, but they don't quite have it.
Yes or no? Do you believe that this is now officially the Joe Biden bribery allegation? And do you believe that you will be able to prove that? Jim Comer.
I sure hope so. And I do believe that there's a lot of smoke. And where there's smoke, there's fire. We just heard testimony today that Joe Biden had lied to the American people.
Yeah, that testimony would lie to the American people was that he had no, conversations about business or business dealings with Hunter Biden. And the testimony was clearly by the witness that Hunter Biden was trying to sell the illusion that he had access to his dad.
Illusion in quotes, according to at least what we hear. Because again, this was a closed-door meeting. If they thought this was so damning, you think that the Republicans wouldn't put this in front of the American people?
Well, we put that back up. Why is Jim Jordan Jim Jordan looks like he's afraid the next question is going to be like, well, have you thought if you really want to talk about smoke and fire? What about the guy in the window next to you, Comer, who had multiple former wrestling athletes testify that Jim Jordan completely ignored their pleas and complaints about a sexual predator?
Yeah, Jim Jordan coming in. Yeah, sometimes there is smoke without fire. There's no fire.
Yeah. I mean, let's not get carried away.
Could be a smoke machine or something.
And I love to, this was yesterday, but Comer was trying to say, because I guess on Saturday or over the weekend, the sentencing for Devin Archer was handed down, or when he was supposed to report to prison for that fraud charge. And Comer was like, suspicious timing right before he's supposed to testify. And it's like, well, I mean, wouldn't they try to sentence him so he couldn't testify, so he would go to prison first? It makes no sense, but they're just
and who scheduled the testimony?
Yeah.
It's
right.
Comer.
It's you guys.
And incidentally, Archer was prosecuted and convicted during the Trump administration. Here is Byron Donalds, who is probably having to do some penance for daring to come out and say Ron DeSantis, his education standards teaching that slavery had some personal benefit for the enslaved. here he's coming out trying to get in on the something suspicious here.
Let me bring this for people to really see how this makes sense. Okay. I'm a member of Congress. I have 3 sons. My 2 older sons have cell phones. If I'm in a meeting and they call me, sometimes I can't call them back. Sometimes I can't call them back for 4 or 5 or 6 hours. Joe Biden is at the ready, waiting for Hunter's call to be able on the phone with people, just say, hey, how's the weather? This stinks to high heaven. It is public corruption. Hunter Biden is the bag man, and Joe Biden is the influence peddler, pure and simple.
And speaking...
Yes, okay. If you pick up your son's calls, you know what that means? You're corrupt.
Something very suspicious going on here. That's too good of a father.
Right.
And there's no, I mean, there's no evidence that, or I mean, let's just, it's not clear that Joe Biden was in the middle, like he was sitting down with, I don't know, Netanyahu, and like, I got to take this. Let me put him on speakerphone. Hey, Hunter. But again, when Joe Biden was vice president and was taking these calls in 2015, his other son was dying of brain cancer. And he's also aware that Hunter is a mess. It's just the level of desperation. I have, I don't know what the Republicans could attack Joe Biden on, from what side. They tried with Afghanistan when he pulled out of Afghanistan. I'm trying to say, like, what they could attack him from the right or left. There are no issues. They realize that. Because the Republicans are not motivated by this. But I'll tell you what, I would be surprised if anything less than 65% of Republican voters believe that Joe Biden is guilty of some form of like Chinese bribery. Yeah. And I'd be surprised if it's anything like that.
Yeah. Remember when Tucker Carlson defended Chris Cuomo because he was standing up for his brother? Like, you wouldn't stand up for your brother, it's family. Like, right? Like the implication here, like, it even goes to that little image of Biden being in a meeting with Netanyahu and like taking his son's phone. Like, the implication here is Biden is so loyal to family that for like a skim off the top of one of his son's business deal, he's going to throw over the interests of the United States and his sort of what he would prefer as the way to govern and do foreign policy, which is like an insane. He's not that kind of guy.
No, he's not. I mean, he's not even the kind of guy that, like, I think Digby was saying this on Friday. Not saying Biden's some saint, but he has not cashed in on his name in the way that other Democrats have, in the way that Obama has, in the way that Hillary Clinton has. He's much more low key.
That's because he's getting all this Chinese money.
I mean, when's the last time he worked in the private sector?
Not that much. To be the vice president, to be the vice president, you're going to give me like a piece of $5 million to completely like I've been senator for 50 years. Yeah. Get in this position, and the payoff is going to be a couple $100,000.
Like, he's an agent for like a mid-level, like a replacement level NBA player. Like, that's not enough money to like sell it out the United States.
As vice president.
I know. When Biden was corrupt, he was just in the ways that all of them are, which was that he was like beholden to the credit card companies in Delaware, as opposed to what all these other guys have done is been in the private sector, then come into government and then do everything for your other employer, right. Or, literally take like plane rides with billionaires and then do their bidding. Biden's very much on the lower end of standard boilerplate DC corruption.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump's Political Action Committee, which started with $105 million, has last year, with less than $4 million left in its account. The PAC is called Save America.
And it's clear, we have to just delineate what the differences between a PAC and a super PAC, just to remind people here, because Trump's Save America PAC is directly associated with him, and there are more restrictions on PACs in that way. Donation limits to PACs are $5,000. Super PACs, no
disclosure,
limits, no disclosure, and they're supposedly independent of the candidate, but that's never the case. It's just a way to legalize really corruption. And this is an example of it.
And so Trump controls how his PAC is spent. Save America. The super PAC he doesn't control. They had raised money through his PAC sent it to the super PAC, and now they're asking for the money back because they need to pay lawyers. The money was supposed to go to television commercials. The super PAC one was.
And a lot of that super PAC money has been spent mostly on anti-DeSantis ads, which is fun.
Right. That's the Make America Great Again, Inc. And it's already sent back like $13 million practically to pay for Trump's legal bills.
In multi-million-dollar chunks.
Which is almost all that the super PAC raised at the beginning of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating. It's also probably illegal, but there doesn't seem to be any rules.
Well, there's no way to know that the money that they're getting back is the same money that was donated. And it seems like a way to circumvent that $5,000 donation limit when you're getting refund payments from the super PAC. And it also, I would say, brings up a level of potential illegal coordination between said super PAC and the political PAC.
No.
It should be a campaign finance crime, but that doesn't apparently exist in this country.
It's a finance crime, and I'm going to do the finance crime.
Yeah.
That's his rap. We should... I just want a couple of words before we go into the fun half. And we'll talk about DeSantis and Vivek then. One, there is an uptick in the one of the ways in which you could see COVID surges coming is to look at the sewerage of any particular city. And it shows up there very early, apparently. And there's been a big uptick in the COVID in the sewage. We still, right now, hospitalizations are still at their lowest ebb since this started. However, if you look at the graph, it is headed up. So be careful. And, I still, if I am if I'm on the subway, I wear a mask. If I take a cab, I wear a mask. Right now.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, has there been guidance on boosters?
Boosters are coming out in the fall. They're trying to develop, or they've been developing and testing, I think, like an Omicron booster. The good news is that there doesn't seem to be a new dominant variation. Nothing is sort of taken hold. No particularly new variation is of concern. And so that's the good news. The NIH is also starting to do first clinical trials for long COVID treatments. But people are ringing, the alarm bells that our health system is just not set up in such a way that we're going to be able to deal with all the implications of long COVID. There's some great stuff in this month's prospect about how particularly hedge funds are really hurting our medical system. It just becomes clearer and clearer. We need single payer, but I who knows when that's going to sort of permeate a broader consciousness. But we'll have some of those prospect people on in the coming Wednesday, Bradley, to have them on. Bradley, are you okay? Also, just an update. We had Ryan Grimm on last week, a week ago Friday. He had written a piece in the Intercept about the potential of a lab leak being the source of COVID. There were a couple of things that he said that people on Twitter have called to our attention that was inaccurate, and I just want to catch up with that. One thing that we said, I think both Emma and I reiterated in that conversation, was that there is no evidence of a lab leak. We are still 3 years out. There is no evidence of a lab leak. There is supposed circumstantial evidence, but you could develop circumstantial evidence for a lot of stuff. When we talked to Ryan Grimm, he had not seen the entire Slack exchanges between the authors of the first report on the origins of COVID that happened in like February of 2020.
March 2020, the Nature one?
Yes.
Yeah.
He had not seen the full Slack. With people who have read the full Slack, they have come to the conclusion that there was really the implications that are being made out of it were not the case. People can go and read those themselves and make their determination. I mean, frankly, but let me just correct a couple of things that he said that upon further examination is not correct. He said that every animal sold at the wet market was traced back to farms. And I found a Wall Street Journal piece by Jeremy Page, Betsy McKay, and Drew Henshaw back in 2021 of June. And it said that that's not the case, that there were a lot of these farms where the animals were killed, that there was no antibodies, that they just weren't able to trace all of them. So that is not the case. He also cited that athletes from these military games, I guess, that were taking place in China, brought back COVID to Italy in October. That is not established. That is not the case. He also said that the wet market was 1 mile from the virology lab. And in fact, it turns out to be closer to 9 miles, if my conversion from metric to miles is correct.
That's important to note.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that and correct that record. I mean, here's the bottom line again. I think for us here is the question then becomes the second order question. Should the questions of a lab leak have been censored from Facebook for however period? Maybe, I think he said 2 years. I don't know if that was 2 years, but let's just stipulate that it was. There was reporting back in June of 2021 in Politico that in spring of 2020, the senior Trump officials decided to strongly imply that COVID-19 came from a Chinese lab. I mean, it was an attempt by the Trump administration to deflect from their
towards Chinese people, it's not a coincidence that anti-Asian hate crimes in this country are up. Like, the skepticism should be directed towards hawkish narratives towards China. That is why that impulse is so well established that to put that aside in examinations of the lab leak theory, I think is silly.
The cause for war, exactly.
Yeah.
And here's the point, is that the question as to whether, Facebook was correct in moderating it, or this is nefarious that they did it. It really comes down to this question. Do you think there is, and again, private entities like Facebook or Twitter or whatever, they can moderate whatever they want. And the real question is whether government, A, should suppress this, and by suppress, I mean literally suppress it, or B, should government recommend to these entities that they don't allow disinformation. It is the equivalent, and I know this is not a direct, I think we mentioned this the other day, to yelling fire in a crowded theater, just as an example. And if you believe there is no instance in which a government during a time of emergency, which and maybe people don't believe that the pandemic was a time of emergency.
Kills
maybe you didn't
people.
See the refrigerated trailers for bodies in New York City. But if you believe that it was an emergency, do you believe that the government has an interest in suppressing false information during an emergency? If that answer is yes, then the question becomes, what information constitutes false? How far should they go? It's a negotiation. There is no like formula for this. And I don't know if you were suppressed by saying like asking the question or providing supposed answers to the question, because we know now there is no evidence. There is circumstantial evidence, but to develop rumors at that time based upon a lack of evidence, I mean, people can argue whether or not that constituted misinformation. And maybe moderators could have been more circumspect as to like what constituted misinformation and what didn't. But it is, and I do think it's a question, obviously, for scientists to work on, and for public policy folks who are like associated with funding scientists. I mean, I think that is all legitimate, but the notion of it being an example of authoritarianism, or the notion of it being an example of like censorious nature of big tech, is absurd. It's just absurd. If you don't, it is censorious, in my estimation, to build sort of like third rails around the ability of a government or other entities in any way to sort of respond to the public interest. And we can argue as to what constitutes a proper response in this instance and that I think is legitimate. But to make claims about authority, and I'm not saying that Grimm did this, but there are others.
A whole lot of people on that beat do.
That we're talking about authoritarianism and being censorious. No, they're conflating two things. They're conflating people arguing as to whether it's responsible to do this stuff. And they're also basically saying there is no time when this should happen. And I personally believe that in certain circumstances, the government has an interest in at least suggesting and fighting against misinformation. There was no one who ever went to jail. There was no one who was ever fined. There was no one who was ever fired. There was never any, I mean, the only explicit threats that ever came, I think, to these places was from Trump, frankly. But there was no government agencies that were saying, if you don't do this, this is not like the Patriot Act where they were going in and talking to librarians and saying, you can't tell people that we've come and asked for the records of what people have taken out. This was a situation where we're in the middle of a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, let's hope. And the government is saying, like, we want to discourage misinformation to go out there because from a public health standpoint, the only way, and I have no doubt there were mistakes were made. I also have no doubt that, like, in the context of an administration determined to deny the existence of a pandemic. I don't know if people remember, like, when Trump was like, I don't think we should let him, if we let the boat come in, the people with the COVID, we're just going to get more COVID.
He like the xenophobia I mentioned earlier is not like enough to disprove the lab leak theory, but it is a piece of context to take into account, especially given the fact that all reputable authorities on this front have said the zoonotic origin is the more likely outcome, and that there has not been, outside of just like discussions about internal deliberations at Nation magazine in March 2020, much evidence provided to the contrary that would prove the lab leak theory. Go ahead, Matt.
I mean, to me, I see this as, and I don't think Ryan's doing this, but like this general thing is like people upset that you're not letting us run on something with no evidence, but that we found useful for agitating against China with. And it's like the same anti-censorship thing is like, well, don't censor me. I just have a different opinion about climate change, something like that. And to me, it's like, I think that the government, especially like the EPA or CDC during a pandemic, they do have a role in offering guidance. They shouldn't be able to like throw Zuckerberg in prison or something like that. To me, the decision that what a platform holds should be one transparently done, but also in the more democratic in the actual workplace. Does Facebook want to hold Trump saying when the looting starts, the shooting starts? Like these are like, or do we want to like have a platform? Because I think if Twitter or Facebook employees said, hey, we don't want our platform just to be used for agitating against China in a way that doesn't have any sort of evidence, but like has some sort of patina of investigation, like then they shouldn't have to do it. But like, I just feel like this is we talk about free speech in the First Amendment. That's not really what we're talking about here.
Right. All right, folks. I'm going to head into the fun half. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of comments about this.
Really? I don't understand. I genuinely don't understand why people give a crap about the lab leak theory. I mean, I care in the sense that I feel like the fact that more than half of Americans believe it, like, and there's not been evidence for it. I find that to be slightly problematic, and the racism that comes from it, or the hawkishness towards China. But what else are we really caring about here?
What's also odd to me too is how little we're hearing about actual sort of like safeguards. That, I mean,
yeah,
I don't need a lab leak theory to say that we need to safeguard this stuff.
But that's it, Sam. Like, it's because it's an anti-public health. Like the Koch brothers. Like, and I'm not saying Ryan Grimm is, but all the other people on the right that are participating in this don't want that conversation to happen. They want to think like this is a freak accident that isn't going to happen again. We don't need to think about it. That's why they're participating, and that's why I have taken the position that I have.
It's anti-expertise, anti-science, that kind of thing.
Well, it's public health. Yes, government doing stuff.
Yeah,
right.
Essentially.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right, folks. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, but you get the fun half. And you have my solemn vow that no more than at least 2 or 3 times a week will I take 25-minute phone calls from people who are convinced they know facts about stuff that they on the slightest bit of questioning don't know anything about.
Yeah.
I'll only do that 2 or 3 times a week. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Oh, and soon I'm going to have I think we're working on a special deal for, what is it? What's that thing that Benjamin does?
Jazz Daredevil?
Jazz Daredevil whiskey highball, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he cans them all by hand. That's right.
Yep. But we'll talk more about that. Emma!
Yeah.
People are talking about what happened yesterday.
Lots of buzz.
ESPN.
Yeah.
Huge buzz.
Great episode. Arian Foster, Houston Texans all-time rushing leader, multiple in 2010 and 2012. He was the league rushing leader, one of the great running backs of the past 20 years. Joined us to talk about the massive issue with labor in the NFL right now as it relates to the position. We also talked about some of the problematic stuff in college football, among other things. His atheism, how that was pretty groundbreaking when he went and he played at Tennessee and played in the South, and how different coaches responded to him. I mean, he's just like the most thoughtful guy, and I'm really grateful that he came on. And we talked about a bunch of other different topics, including Irsay versus Jonathan Taylor, Aaron Rodgers versus Sean Payton, and more. YouTube.com/ESPN show.
Matt.
No Left Reckoning tonight because David Griscom is returning from New York. I met him up. We went out for drinks last night, but we'll be live tomorrow night with Darn Noor talking about climate. I might do a stream of Shadows of Doubt tonight. We'll see how it looks. So
wow.
Yeah, twitch.tv/.
What is that? What is that?
It's a detective simulator where you.
Oh, you were talking about this the other night.
I'm obsessed with it.
I've heard so much about this detective simulator.
It's totally taken over my life.
Saul and I are getting closer to like being, video game.
You're gonna get him a console?
I think eventually. I don't know.
I'll sell you my Switch. I haven't used it in months. I regret buying it. Bradley convinced me to buy
Switch,
it.
though, a Switch he can walk with, right?
Yep.
You can take it out.
That. No. I have learned my lesson.
Take it everywhere.
Saul has a phone now, but it is a flip phone, and it's the size of like this bottle.
Yeah.
And it's because
it's a flip phone.
It's a flip phone. Yeah, man.
Why does it need to be that big?
Because I want the biggest, most inconvenient thing for him to have.
Okay.
So that he puts it in his bag because he can't. I don't want him to hold it on a regular basis. I don't want him to carry it in his pocket. I just want it for like when he walks home from school.
Just put a ball and chain on the other end.
He can get in touch with his buddies, and he's like calling them and texting them and stuff like that. And that's okay. Because like my experience, boys his age, it's just literally like they're not like social beings. They don't like, it's just like, what's up? Nothing. Okay. Talk to you later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got Pokemon to catch.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
That's some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.